Clarity Clinical Solutions.
Welcome to this training module on financial disclosure in clinical research. Financial conflicts of interest can undermine the credibility of clinical trial data and erode public trust. The FDA requires sponsors and investigators to disclose financial interests that could bias study outcomes. This module will walk you through the regulatory framework, key definitions, and practical procedures for completing financial disclosure forms correctly. Understanding these requirements is essential for maintaining data integrity and regulatory compliance. Financial disclosure exists to identify and manage conflicts of interest that could potentially bias clinical trial results. When investigators have significant financial stakes in the outcome of a study, such as stock ownership, patent interests, or substantial payments from the sponsor, there is a perceived risk that data could be influenced. The FDA uses disclosed information to assess whether a study's results are reliable. Without transparent disclosure, the entire clinical research enterprise risks losing credibility with regulators, physicians, and patients. The regulatory authority for financial disclosure comes from 21 CFR Part 54, Financial Disclosure by Clinical Investigators. This regulation requires applicants submitting a marketing application, NDA, BLA, or PMA, to disclose certain financial interests of clinical investigators who conducted the covered studies. The rule applies to all investigators who participated in studies submitted in support of the application's safety and efficacy. The FDA may refuse to file an application if financial disclosure information is incomplete or absent. Financial disclosure requirements apply to all clinical investigators who participated in studies submitted as part of a marketing application. This includes the principal investigator and all sub-investigators who make significant contributions to the study. The definition extends to the spouse and dependent children of each investigator, as their financial interests are imputed to the investigator. Sponsors must identify each covered investigator and collect financial disclosure information before or during the study, not after data collection is complete. The regulation identifies several categories of financial interests that must be disclosed. Compensation from the sponsor that could be affected by study outcome, including milestone payments or royalties. Proprietary interests in the investigational product, such as patents, trademarks, or licensing agreements. Significant equity interests in the sponsor, including stock or stock options valued over $50,000. Payments received from the sponsor during the past year exceeding $25,000, excluding the cost of conducting the study itself. Form FDA 3455, titled Financial Disclosure by Clinical Investigators, is the standard document used to collect this information. The form captures the investigator's identifying information, the study details, and a detailed listing of any financial arrangements with the sponsor. The investigator must certify the accuracy of the information and sign the form. Sponsors use the collected forms to prepare a summary for the FDA marketing application. Electronic systems are increasingly used to manage 3,455 forms across multiple sites in global studies. Financial disclosure information should be collected before the investigator begins study activities, or as soon as financial interests become known. The sponsor must ask investigators to update their disclosure information throughout the study and for 1 year after completion. This ensures the FDA receives current data at the time of the marketing application submission. Late discovery of undisclosed financial interests can delay regulatory review and raise questions about the integrity of the study data. When a financial interest is disclosed, the sponsor must assess whether it creates a potential bias risk. The FDA evaluates the disclosed information and determines whether the data from that investigator's site remains acceptable. Possible outcomes include accepting the data despite the interest, requesting additional analyses, or excluding the site's data from the marketing application. The sponsor should document the mitigation plan and ensure the FDA has sufficient information to make an independent assessment of the conflict's impact. Common mistakes in financial disclosure include incomplete investigator lists, failing to capture all sub-investigators who should have disclosed, inaccurate valuation of equity interests, and misunderstanding what constitutes a disclosable payment. Another frequent issue is collecting disclosure forms after study data collection has begun, which undermines the prospective nature of the requirement. Sponsors also sometimes fail to obtain updated disclosures from investigators who received additional payments during the study. Failure to comply with financial disclosure regulations has serious consequences. The FDA may refuse to file the marketing application, delaying product approval and costing the sponsor substantial time and revenue. In cases of deliberate concealment, the FDA can pursue enforcement actions including civil monetary penalties and criminal prosecution. For investigators, non-compliance can result in disqualification from receiving investigational products. Protecting the integrity of the disclosure process is essential for both sponsor and investigator. Sponsors should implement a centralized financial disclosure tracking system that flags collection deadlines, monitors for changes, and generates audit trails. Train all clinical operations staff on disclosure requirements and integrate the process into site initiation visit checklists. Use clear, standardized communication to explain to investigators what must be disclosed and why. Conduct periodic quality checks on collected forms. Engage with the FDA early if complex conflicts arise. A proactive program prevents last-minute surprises during NDA review. For global clinical trials that will be submitted to the FDA, U.S. financial disclosure requirements apply regardless of where the study was conducted. This creates unique challenges when working with investigators in countries where financial disclosure norms differ. Translation of forms, cultural sensitivities around discussing personal finances, and differences in compensation structures must all be managed carefully. Sponsors should build these considerations into country-specific feasibility assessments and investigator selection processes. Financial disclosure under 21 CFR Part 54 protects clinical trial integrity by identifying potential biases. All investigators and sub-investigators must disclose specified financial interests before study activities begin. Thresholds include equity over $50,000 and payments over $25,000 annually. Forms must be collected before enrollment, updated during the study and for 1 year after, and submitted with the marketing application. Non-compliance can delay FDA review and damage professional reputations. Transparency is the foundation of trustworthy clinical research. You have completed the training module on financial disclosure in clinical research. Remember that transparency about financial interests protects the credibility of the entire clinical trial enterprise. Reference 21 CFR Part 54 for full regulatory details, use Form FDA 3455 for standardized disclosure, and maintain open communication with your sponsor's regulatory team. Thank you for your dedication to ethical research practices and regulatory compliance in clinical development.